The night was cold and silent. Only the sound of metal creaking in the wind filled the alien scrapyard. Broken machines, rusted ships, and twisted parts lay scattered under the pale light of the twin moons. This place was not for the living. It was a graveyard for the unwanted, the broken, and the forgotten. In the middle of this scrapyard, a young alien girl lay among the junk. Her skin was pale, her body thin, and her legs did not move. She was paralyzed, abandoned, and left to die by the very family who once called her their daughter. Her eyes glowed faintly with tears, but no one cared enough to wipe them away. She had begged them not to leave her, her trembling voice calling for mercy, but her family's cold words still echoed in her mind. "You are useless. Better off dead." With that, they had thrown her into the scrapyard like trash. Her heart broke, and she could only stare at the sky, waiting for death to take her. Time passed slowly. The scrapyard grew colder, and her body weaker. Every sound of moving metal made her flinch, afraid of creatures that lived in the shadows. She whispered into the empty night, "Please, someone, help me." But her voice was too soft. No one was meant to hear her. No one ever did. Then, footsteps echoed across the junk. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, moved carefully between the wrecks, carrying a small lantern. He was human, a scavenger searching for parts to sell. His boots crunched against broken wires and glass as his eyes scanned the piles for anything of value. The girl froze, her breath shallow. She had heard stories about humans, dangerous, selfish, cruel. Her family always told her to fear them, to never trust one. But now, as the light drew closer, fear mixed with hope in her chest. The human stopped suddenly, his lantern shining on her face. At first, he thought it was just another broken doll, thrown away like the others. But then her eyes blinked, glowing faintly with life. He staggered back in shock, whispering, "You're alive." The girl's lips trembled, her voice weak and cracking. "Please, don't leave me here." Her words pierced through the silence of the scrapyard like a knife. The human's heart pounded. He had come looking for scrap, not for a living soul. And yet, something about her fragile form, her trembling hands, her desperate eyes stopped him from turning away. He crouched beside her, studying her carefully. Her legs were stiff, unmoving, her body too weak to stand. She was paralyzed, broken, just like the junk around her. But unlike the junk, she still breathed, still hoped, still begged. The human whispered almost to himself, "Why would anyone leave you here?" Tears rolled down her cheeks as she tried to answer, but her voice failed. The human's chest tightened. A war raged inside him. Walk away or take her. If he walked away, no one would ever know. She would simply vanish into the scrapyard. If he took her, he risked anger, danger, maybe even death. The girl reached out with the little strength she had, her hand shaking as it touched his boot. That single touch burned into his heart. He closed his eyes, sighing heavily. Knowing the choice was already made, he bent down, slid his arms under her frail body, and lifted her from the cold metal ground. The girl gasped, not in fear but in disbelief. No one had ever held her gently since the day she was cast aside. Her weak arms tried to cling to him as if afraid he would change his mind, but he only tightened his grip, carrying her away from the scrapyard of shadows. Behind them, the junkyard lay silent once more. But for the first time, the girl's heart carried a spark of hope. A human had found her, and he had not turned away. The human carried the girl through the scrapyard, his lantern flickering against piles of twisted metal. Every step echoed in the silence, the crunch of glass and steel sharp in the night air. The girl rested in his arms, her eyes half closed, still unsure if this was real or only a dream. She tried to speak, but her voice was faint, almost lost in the cold wind. Why didn't you leave me?" she whispered. The human glanced down, surprised at the strength it must have taken her to say those words. His lips pressed tight before he finally answered, "Because I couldn't." The girl blinked, confused. Her whole life she had been told humans were selfish, cruel, only caring for themselves. Yet here he was, a stranger, carrying her away from death. Her heart trembled with questions she could not yet form. As they moved deeper into the scrapyard's edge, strange sounds stirred in the shadows. The human's eyes darted around, his grip tightening on the girl. The scrapyard was not safe at night. Scavenger beasts lurked among the junk, feeding on the weak. One low growl echoed from behind a broken engine, and the girl's body stiffened in fear. The human stopped, listening carefully. With one hand he held her, with the other he reached into his belt and pulled out a small metal rod. It was no real weapon, only a tool for scavenging, but his grip was firm. The growl came closer, claws scratching against steel, glowing eyes watching from the dark. The girl's voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, don't leave me." Her words carried more fear than strength, but they cut straight into the human's heart. He crouched low, whispering back, "I'm not leaving, not ever." With that he stepped forward, light held high, scaring the creature back into the dark. The girl stared at him, her eyes wide with awe. He had risked himself for her, someone he had just met, someone broken and owned. Her lips trembled as tears slid down her cheeks. But this time, they were not only tears of sorrow, they were also tears of hope. The human continued walking until the scrapyard ended and the path to the outer hills began. His breath was heavy, sweat shining on his brow, but he never loosened his hold on her. Finally, he stopped to rest on a flat piece of stone, laying her gently beside him. The girl felt the cold ground under her back, but it was softer than the cruel metal she had been left on before. For a moment, silence surrounded them, broken only by the wind. Then with effort, the girl turned her face toward him. Her voice cracked as she asked, "Why? Why do you care? I'm useless. I can't walk. I can't work. I can't fight." The human shook his head slowly, staring at her glowing eyes. "Because you're alive, and that's enough." His words stunned her. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not her family, not her people. Alive, that was enough. She wanted to believe him, but her fear still lingered, wrapping around her like chains. He leaned back, watching the stars above. "You know," he said softly, "scrap can be rebuilt. Broken machines can be fixed, sometimes even made stronger than before." His eyes shifted to her. "Maybe the same is true for you." Her heart skipped a beat at his words, not knowing how to answer. The girl tried to lift her hand, weak and trembling, reaching toward him. For a moment she thought she would fail, but his hand reached out and held hers firmly. Her eyes widened at the warmth of his grip, the simple act of someone not recoiling from her broken body. "Thank you," she whispered, the faintest smile touching her lips. The human gave a small smile in return, his voice low but steady. "You're safe now, as long as I'm here." The girl closed her eyes, clinging to his words. For the first time since she had been abandoned, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was not worthless after all. The night grew colder as the human carried the alien girl across the hills, her weak body pressed against his chest, her faint breaths brushing against his shirt. Every step he took felt heavier, not because of her weight, but because of the decision he now faced. He had found her in the scrapyard, abandoned, broken, left to die. And yet saving her meant more than just kindness, it meant danger. Aliens hated humans. Her family might come looking for her, and if they found her in his care, they would call it kidnapping. His life would be at risk, his freedom taken, maybe worse. But every time he looked down at her face, pale and fragile, he knew walking away was impossible. Her glowing eyes, filled with fear yet clinging to hope, reminded him of something he had almost forgotten: humanity. He had been a scavenger all his life, fighting for scraps, ignored by the world. But now, holding her, he felt a new purpose pressing into his heart. The girl stirred, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Why do you carry me, human? You don't know me." Her words were soft, weak, yet heavy with doubt. He slowed his steps, looking at her carefully. "Maybe I don't know you," he said, "but I know what it's like to be thrown away." Her breath caught, surprise flashing in her glowing eyes. She had expected him to stay silent, maybe to say she was a burden. Instead, his words struck deep inside her heart. For the first time, she felt a strange connection. Two souls broken in different ways but bound by the same pain. They reached a small clearing where a rusted ship hull leaned against the rocks. The human lowered her gently onto a blanket he had carried with him. The girl shivered in the night air, her thin arms curling close to her chest. He pulled off his jacket and draped it over her, ignoring her quiet protest. "You'll be cold." He sat beside her, staring into the darkness. The scrapyard beasts were gone for now, but danger still lingered in the air. Her family, cruel and powerful, might still be searching, And if they found her alive, it would not be out of love. It would be because they wanted to control her fate, to use her weakness as a tool for shame or gain. The girl turned her face toward him, her eyes wet with tears. "You should leave me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They will come for me, and they will hurt you too." Her words were not a warning but a plea. She did not want him to suffer because of her. The human shook his head slowly, his voice firm. "No, I won't leave you." She stared at him in disbelief, her lips trembling. "But why? I'm broken. I can't walk. I can't fight. I'll only slow you down." His hand tightened into a fist, his jaw clenched. "Then I'll carry you as far as I need to." Her breath caught again, her heart racing at his words. No one had ever chosen her before. No one had ever fought for her. The weight of his choice pressed heavy in the night air. It was not just about saving her. It was about defying everyone who said she was worthless. The human leaned back, his eyes on the stars above. "They call people like me useless too," he said quietly. "But I learned something. Sometimes the broken things have the most value. They just need someone to see it." The girl's tears fell freely now, her chest rising and falling with each shaky breath. In her heart, a spark of warmth began to grow, faint but real. For the first time since her family abandoned her, she did not feel like a burden. She felt like someone worth carrying, someone worth saving. And as the cold night wrapped around them, she whispered one final word, so soft it nearly vanished into the wind. "Stay." The human turned his head, meeting her glowing eyes, and he answered without hesitation, "I'm not going anywhere." The human finally reached the edge of the scrapyard. Beyond the broken hills stood his small workshop, built from rusted metal sheets and salvaged wood. It was hidden between tall piles of discarded machines, a place no one cared to visit. To most, it looked like another heap of junk, but for him, it was home. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, carrying the alien girl carefully inside. The dim lantern light revealed a cramped room filled with tools, gears, and half-repaired machines. The air smelled of oil and dust, but it was warm, unlike the cold scrapyard outside. He laid her down gently on a worn cot covered with old blankets. The girl's glowing eyes scanned the room, her lips parting in surprise. This was not a palace, not even a proper house, yet it felt safer than anywhere she had ever been. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Why? Why bring me here?" The human crouched beside her, his rough hands adjusting the blanket over her fragile form. "Because you needed a place, and I couldn't leave you out there." Her throat tightened, tears threatening to spill. She had begged her own family for mercy, but they had turned away, and yet this stranger, a human she was told to fear, had carried her all the way to his home. It made no sense, and yet it felt real. The human moved around the workshop, pulling out a battered pot and some food scraps. He lit a small fire in the stove, the orange glow warming the room. The girl watched him with curious eyes, her body too weak to move. When the smell of warm broth filled the air, her stomach growled softly, embarrassing her. The human smiled faintly, setting a bowl beside her. He lifted a spoon, carefully bringing it to her lips. At first she hesitated, shame burning in her chest, but hunger won. She opened her mouth slowly, tasting warmth she thought she would never feel again. Her eyes filled with tears as she swallowed. It wasn't just the food, it was the kindness behind it. Every spoonful carried something she had been denied all her life. Care. When the bowl was empty, she whispered, "Thank you." Her voice fragile but sincere. The human leaned back, wiping his hands. "You don't have to thank me," he said softly. "Anyone would have done the same." But even as he said it, he knew it was not true. He had seen how the world turned its back on the weak, just as her family had. The girl studied him, her glowing eyes uncertain. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again, almost in disbelief. He paused, his gaze falling to the ground. "Because no one else will," he admitted. His words hung heavy in the air, more powerful than any promise. For the first time, the girl allowed herself to relax. Her body sank into the cot, her trembling eased, and her eyes slowly closed. But before sleep could take her, she whispered one last question. "Will you send me back to them?" The human froze, staring at her fragile face. Images of her cruel family flashed in his mind, the ones who had thrown her away like broken metal. His jaw clenched, and his answer came sharp and certain. No, never. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, and with that, she drifted into sleep. The human sat beside her, watching her fragile chest rise and fall. He knew trouble was coming. Her family would not forget her so easily, but he also knew one thing for certain. He had made his choice, and no matter what danger waited, he would protect her, even if it cost him everything. Days passed in the hidden workshop. The human worked during the daylight, fixing broken machines and trading parts for food. At night, he stayed beside the paralyzed alien girl, feeding her, cleaning her wounds, and keeping her warm. The girl began to trust him, her eyes glowing softer each time she whispered a quiet, "Thank you." But safety was fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. In the nearby town, whispers started to spread. Someone claimed they had seen a human carrying something unusual through the scrapyard at night. Others swore they heard faint cries near his workshop. At first, the human ignored the gossip. People always talked, and he had lived with suspicion all his life. But this time the rumors carried weight, because the girl's family had noticed her absence. They had left her to die, but when they learned her body was not found, their greed returned. Her family did not want her back out of love. They wanted her alive only for power, to keep their bloodline unbroken. And if a human had saved her, they would not forgive it. They would call it theft. They would call it a crime. One evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the land, the girl looked uneasy. She had overheard the whispers when the human went to trade. Her lips trembled as she asked, They know, don't they?" The human hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, some people are starting to wonder." Fear filled her glowing eyes, tears welling up. "You should let me go," she whispered. "If they find me here, they will punish you, maybe kill you." The human knelt beside her, his rough hand resting gently on hers. "I already made my choice," he said firmly. "I won't give you back to them." Her chest tightened, torn between guilt and relief. She had been abandoned once, and now she feared she would bring ruin to the only person who had ever cared. But the human's steady voice stilled her fears for the moment. His eyes held no doubt, no hesitation, only resolve. That night, he worked longer than usual. He used scraps of metal and gears to build strange devices, small supports, tools, and even a brace designed to help her move her arms. The girl watched in silence, her heart warming as she realized he was not only protecting her, he was trying to give her strength. But outside, danger was creeping closer. Her family's guards searched the scrapyard, asking questions, offering rewards for information. Every knock on a door, every whisper in the market, made the human's chest grow heavier. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone betrayed him. The girl saw the worry in his eyes. She wanted to tell him to run, to leave her, to save himself. But when she opened her mouth, only one word came out, trembling but certain. "Stay." The human looked at her, surprised, then nodded slowly. "I will." The next morning, as he stepped outside to fetch water, he noticed shadows on the ridge. Two figures in dark armor stood watching his workshop from a distance. His stomach tightened, his instincts screaming that the search had finally reached him. He carried the water inside calmly, but his mind raced with plans. Inside, the girl looked up at him, sensing his unease. "What is it?" she asked softly. The human forced a faint smile, though his voice was heavy. "We may not be alone anymore." Her glowing eyes widened in fear, but he placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "No matter what happens," he said firmly, "I won't let them take you." The girl's heart pounded as she stared at him. Her family was coming, the secret was spreading, and danger was drawing near. But for the first time, she believed in something stronger than fear. She believed in him. The human worked late into the night, his hands black with oil and grease. On the table lay strange metal pieces, wires and bolts, slowly taking shape into something new. The alien girl lay on the cot, watching with wide glowing eyes, her heart heavy yet filled with curiosity. She had never seen anyone work so tirelessly for her, not even her own family. Finally, he carried the device over, a rough frame built from scraps. It was small, shaped like a brace with straps to fit around her shoulders and arms. He knelt beside her, his voice soft but steady. "This might help you move. At least a little." her lips parted in shock, her voice trembling. For me? The human nodded, his rough features softening. Yes, for you. Carefully, he helped her into the brace, tightening the straps with gentle hands. The girl's heart pounded, fear and hope fighting inside her chest. For so long she had believed she would never move again, that her broken body was useless. Try, he whispered, his eyes locked on hers. She swallowed hard and focused, her arms trembling with the effort. At first, nothing happened. Her heart sank, but then, slowly, her fingers twitched. Her glowing eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. I moved. The human smiled faintly, relief washing over him. Yes, you did, he said, his voice steady but warm. The girl began to cry openly, her tears rolling down her face as she whispered again and again, Thank you, thank you. He stayed beside her, steadying her arms as she tried again, patient and calm. For hours they practiced, her weak muscles fighting, the brace helping. Every small movement felt like victory, every failure like a lesson. By the end of the night, her arms could lift slightly, trembling but alive. Her heart swelled with something she had never felt before. Hope. When she grew tired, he placed a blanket over her shoulders. She looked at him with shining eyes, whispering, Why do you care so much? The human leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his voice low. Because no one cared for me either, once, and I know how it feels. His words struck her deeply, her tears returning. But this time, they were not of sorrow, but of connection. As the fire burned low, the girl finally smiled, a soft, fragile smile. You're not like the others, she whispered. You're different. The human chuckled lightly, shaking his head. Maybe, or maybe I just see you for what you are, stronger than you believe. Her breath caught, her heart beating fast. No one had ever called her strong before. Days passed, and their bond grew deeper. He taught her how to use the brace, how to eat on her own again, how to sit up straighter. She told him about her childhood, the cruelty of her family, the way they looked at her like she was a burden, and he listened, never judging, never turning away. At night, she would whisper, I'm afraid they'll find me. And he would answer with the same calm voice, Then let them come. I'll be here. Each time he said those words, her fear lessened, replaced by trust. She began to believe that maybe she was not alone anymore. But outside, the danger grew. Her family's guards were seen closer to the workshop, their shadows stretching longer each evening. The girl knew the peace could not last, that soon they would come for her. Yet she also knew one thing with certainty. She no longer faced the darkness alone. She looked at the human one night, her glowing eyes steady, and whispered, You're my only friend. The human's chest tightened, his jaw set, and he answered softly, And I'll never stop being that. The bond between them was no longer weak, it was stronger than steel, and it was that bond that would soon be tested in ways neither of them imagined. The days of quiet safety were ending. The human could feel it in the air, a heavy tension that settled over his workshop like a storm waiting to break. The alien girl sensed it too, her glowing eyes often turning to the door whenever footsteps echoed outside. Her heart carried fear, but now it also carried trust, for she knew he would never abandon her. One afternoon, the sound of engines roared across the scrapyard. Dust rose as armored vehicles approached, their lights cutting through the rusted piles of junk. The girl's breath caught in her throat, her trembling voice whispering, It's them. The human clenched his fists, his chest heavy but his eyes sharp. Stay quiet. Don't be afraid. Through the cracks of the workshop walls, he saw them, her family, dressed in fine clothes, guarded by soldiers in dark armor. Their faces were cold, sharp, filled with pride and cruelty. They had returned, not out of love, but because they refused to let a human keep what they had thrown away. The door shook as fists pounded against it. Open this door, human, one of the guards shouted, his voice echoing with authority. The girl's eyes filled with tears, her body shaking as she whispered, Don't fight them, please, they'll kill you. But the human placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice calm. I won't let them take you. The door burst open, metal groaning as it swung wide. The guards stormed in, weapons raised, their leader stepping aside to let the family enter. The girl's mother looked at her with cold, unfeeling eyes. "So you still live," she said, her tone dripping with disgust. "And in the hands of a human, how shameful." The girl sobbed, shaking her head. "Don't take me back, please don't." But her mother ignored her cries, lifting her chin in arrogance. "She belongs to us," she declared, turning to the human. "You have no right to touch her, human. Hand her over before you regret it." The human stood tall, his jaw clenched. His eyes burned with anger as he stepped between the girl and her family. "No," he said firmly, his voice sharp like steel. "You left her to die. She's not yours anymore." The guards raised their weapons, the tension in the room thick enough to choke. The girl's father sneered, his voice filled with venom. "You dare speak to us this way? You, a scavenger, a human. She is our blood. She will return with us, broken or not." The girl shook her head violently, tears streaming, her weak voice breaking through. "I'd rather die here than go back with you." Her words struck the air like a blade, silencing the room for a heartbeat. Then her father snarled, "You ungrateful child." The guards stepped forward, their weapons glowing with power. The human's heart pounded, his body ready to fight, though he knew he was outnumbered. He reached for the tools on his table, gripping a metal rod like a weapon. The girl screamed, "Stop! Don't hurt him!" Her voice raw with desperation. But the human did not back down. He planted his feet firmly, his voice steady. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The family laughed, cruel and mocking, unable to believe a human would defy them. Yet there was no laughter in the girl's eyes, only hope and fear entwined. The guards moved closer, their boots heavy on the floor. The girl clutched the blanket tight around her, her glowing eyes fixed on the human's back. For the first time in her life, someone stood for her, shielded her, risked everything to protect her. Her heart ached, not with fear, but with something stronger. The realization that she was no longer worthless. The moment stretched thin, the storm about to break. The family had returned to reclaim what they had thrown away. But this time, they faced not a helpless girl, but a human who had already made his choice, and nothing in the universe could turn him from it. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons, the cold glow of their armor reflecting off the lantern light. The human stood tall, his body tense, a simple scavenger facing trained soldiers. Behind him, the alien girl clutched the blanket around her, her glowing eyes wide with terror. She whispered brokenly, "They'll kill you. Please don't fight them." But the human did not step aside. His voice cut through the heavy air, firm and unshaken. "She stays with me." The family sneered at his defiance, their pride wounded by a human daring to stand against them. The girl's father raised his hand sharply, signaling the guards, "Take him down." The first guard lunged forward, swinging a weapon made of steel and energy. The human moved quickly, grabbing a metal rod from his table and blocking the strike with a loud clang. Pain shot through his arm, but he held his ground, pushing the guard back. The second guard circled, aiming a blow at his head, forcing him to duck low. The fight was uneven, each strike rattling his bones, but he refused to fall. The girl screamed, her voice cracking, "Stop, please stop!" But no one listened. Her family only watched, their eyes cold, treating the fight as entertainment rather than a struggle for life. Her heart broke as she saw blood drip from the human's arm, yet he still stood strong. He swung the rod with all his strength, knocking one guard into a pile of broken scrap. The crash echoed through the workshop, sparks flying as wires snapped under the impact. But the other guard rushed in, slamming a heavy blow into the human's ribs. He staggered back, coughing, but his eyes never left the girl. Her glowing eyes filled with tears as she reached out weakly. Her voice shook as she cried, "Why? Why risk everything for me?" The human's reply came between heavy breaths, his voice steady even in pain. "Because you're worth it." Those were D's struck deeper than any blade, filling her chest with fire. The guards pressed forward again, their weapons raised. The human gritted his teeth, grabbing a broken gear from the table and hurling it into one guard's face. The man stumbled back, his helmet dented, sparks flying. The human then swung his rod, slamming it into the other's chest with desperate force. For a moment, the workshop filled with the sound of clashing metal, grunts, and crashing debris. The girl could only watch, helpless, her body trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Every strike felt like it was hitting her too. Every wound cut into her heart. She wanted to help, but her paralyzed body betrayed her, trapping her in fear. Her family finally stepped forward, anger flashing in their eyes. "You dare to defy us, human?" her mother spat, her voice filled with disgust. "You think you can protect her? You are nothing but trash among trash." But the human stood tall, blood dripping from his face, his voice clear. "Better trash than cowards who abandon their own." The girl gasped at his words, her heart swelling with pride and pain together. Her family's faces twisted with rage, their pride shattered by his defiance. The guards regrouped, preparing for another assault, their weapons glowing brighter. The human's grip tightened on the rod, his chest rising and falling with each breath. The girl cried out, her voice filled with raw desperation. "Please, stop hurting him. He's all I have." Her words filled the air, silencing even the guards for a moment. The human turned his head slightly, just enough to meet her glowing eyes, and in that glance, he found the strength to keep standing. The fight was far from over, but one truth had become clear. This was no longer just about survival. It was about love, loyalty, and the worth of a life everyone else had thrown away. The girl's life, her hope, her dignity. They were worth every wound, every drop of blood, and the human was ready to give everything for her. The human staggered, blood dripping from his forehead, his breathing rough and heavy. The guards circled him like predators, their weapons glowing brighter with each step. Behind him, the alien girl pressed herself against the wall, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Her body shook, her voice trembling. "Please, please, stop hurting him." But the guards did not stop. Her family stood watching, their faces cold and full of pride. They had abandoned her once, but now they wanted to claim her again, not out of love but out of control. To them, she was not a daughter, she was only a tool, a name, a bloodline. The human raised his rod once more, even as his arms trembled with weakness. Every strike he blocked sent pain shooting through his body, but he refused to fall. He stood between the girl and the people who had thrown her away, and with each passing moment, his resolve burned brighter. The girl's chest tightened, her tears falling freely. She wanted to help, to stand beside him, to protect the one who had chosen her when no one else would. Her paralyzed body had always betrayed her, trapping her in helplessness. But now, something inside her stirred. Something fierce and alive. Her eyes glowed brighter, her trembling fingers twitching. The brace he had built hummed faintly, responding to her desperate will. She clenched her teeth, pushing harder, pain searing through her arms as she tried to lift them. For the first time in years, her hands moved, weak but real. The human was knocked to his knees, blood dripping onto the dusty floor. One guard raised his weapon high, ready to strike the final blow. The girl screamed, her voice raw. "No!" Her arm lifted, shaking but strong enough to grab a broken piece of scrap beside her. With all her strength, she hurled it forward. The jagged metal struck the guard's helmet with a sharp crack. The man stumbled, his attack fall. Tearing, his weapon crashing to the ground. The room froze in shock. Even the human turned in disbelief. The girl's glowing eyes blazed like fire, her chest rising and falling with fierce determination. "I am not worthless," she shouted, her weak voice echoing with strength it had never carried before. Her family stared at her in silence, their arrogance shaken. For the first time, they saw not a broken child, but someone who had chosen to fight. The human pushed himself back to his feet, his eyes meeting hers. Pride burned through his pain, giving him new strength. Together, without words, they stood against the ones who had cast her aside. The bond between them had awakened something powerful, her will to live. The guards hesitated, glancing at each other, unsure how to proceed. The girl's mother sneered, but there was unease in her eyes. "You are still weak," she spat, trying to regain control. "You will never survive without us." But the girl shook her head, her glowing eyes fierce. "I don't need you. I never did." The human raised his rod once more, his stance stronger now that he knew she was no longer broken inside. He shouted, his voice sharp as steel, "She chooses her own life, not you." The family stepped back, their pride wounded by defiance from both human and daughter alike. The guards tightened their weapons but did not move, uncertainty freezing them in place. The girl leaned forward, her hands trembling but alive. Tears mixed with determination as she whispered, "You saved me. Now let me save myself." Her body was still weak, but her spirit had awakened, unbreakable and blazing with fire. And in that moment, everyone in the room knew The paralyzed girl they had thrown away was gone. She had risen, not through strength of body, but through strength of will. And beside her stood the human who had given her that chance. Together, they were no longer broken, no longer alone. Together, they were unstoppable. The workshop stood in silence, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. The human leaned on his rod, blood dripping from his wounds, his body aching but unbroken. The alien girl sat upright, her arms trembling but alive, her glowing eyes fierce with new strength. Across from them, her family stood frozen, their pride cracked, their arrogance shaken. The girl's father clenched his fists, his voice trembling with anger. "You defy us, both of you." But his words carried less weight than before, for the sight of his daughter rising against him had shattered his control. The girl's mother sneered, her lips curling in disgust. "You will regret this, human. You think you can protect her forever?" The human raised his chin, his voice steady. "If I must, yes." The guards shifted uneasily, glancing at each other. They had expected an easy task, but instead they faced a human who refused to fall and a girl who refused to break. Their hesitation was clear, and in that hesitation lay the truth. Fear. For even power and armor could not crush the fire of will they now saw before them. The girl took a deep breath, her voice trembling but strong. "You abandoned me." Her glowing eyes locked onto her parents, tears shining like light in the dark. "You called me useless, you left me to die, but I am still here." Her words echoed like thunder, shaking the room more than any weapon could. Her family's faces twisted, but they could not hide the shame in their eyes. The girl lifted her trembling hand, pointing toward the human. "He is more family to me than you ever were," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. The human's chest tightened, his heart pounding, but he stood firm beside her. Her father snarled, "You are no daughter of mine." The girl's tears fell freely, but she did not look away. "Then so be it," she whispered, her voice soft but final. The human stepped forward, his presence like a shield. "Leave now, before I make you." The family hesitated, their pride clashing with the truth before their eyes. Finally, with cold glares and bitter silence, they turned away. The guards lowered their weapons and followed, their heavy boots echoing as they left the workshop behind. The door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was louder than the fight. The girl's body shook as the tension drained from her. She looked at the human, tears spilling down her cheeks. You saved me." He dropped the rod, sinking to one knee beside her, his rough hand brushing gently against her trembling arm. "No," he said softly, "you saved yourself." Her glowing eyes widened, her lips trembling. "But I couldn't have without you." The human smiled faintly, tired but warm. "And I couldn't have without you." In that moment, the bond between them was sealed, stronger than blood, stronger than fear. They had chosen each other, and nothing could take that away. Days passed, and the world outside still whispered, but inside the small workshop, something new was born. The girl practiced with the brace, her arms growing steadier each day, her spirit shining brighter. The human repaired machines by day and taught her to build by night, sharing laughter. Where once there was only silence, the scrapyard that had been her grave became their home. Among rusted metal and broken ships, they forged something unbreakable: hope, family, and a life built not from bloodlines but from choice. And though danger still lingered beyond the hills, they no longer feared it. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, the girl turned to him, her glowing eyes softer than ever before, her lips curving into a fragile smile. "You gave me life when I thought it was over," she whispered. "You gave me family." The human rested his hand on hers, his voice steady. "And I'll never stop." The scrapyard lay silent, but inside the workshop, two broken souls had found each other. What was once despair had become strength. What was once loneliness had become love.